Boom. Hey, folks. Welcome. Hello and welcome to Runkle to the Bailey if you haven't been here. So, I have somebody saying, Sir, I was in the middle of a song. I'm sorry. We had a scheduled appointment and I try to be on time. It's a thing I try to do because once I start cutting myself excuses and start cutting myself reasons to not be on time, it'll just get worse and worse and worse. So I try to be on time every time if I can. So we are on day 2 of the Alec Baldwin trial, and I've been doing live coverage, but I'm also trying to do a recap if I can. This is a bit of an experiment to see, can I survive this? And if you're wondering what my wife, Mrs. Runkle's take on this has been, it's basically, if you die of exhaustion, I get your stuff, right? And fair ball. So we are going to, somebody says, what are you drinking? Espresso? No, just regular cola. So we're going to do a bit of a recap of the last 2 days. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start out with the states opening. And then once we do the states opening, we are going to watch part of the defense opening. And the reason why we're going to watch part of the defense opening is because the defense opening gets really long and rambly eventually. And that is, we don't need all of that. So I will sort of give you a summary, but we'll watch up to the point where it starts being, we're going to watch to the point where it starts going off the rails, and then I will explain why it's going off the rails and what's happening. Okay, so give me a second here. We're just going to cue this up to the right place. Here we go. Allow. There we go. All right, so we're going to start off. It's going to begin with the states opening. And we're going to watch the states opening. The states opening is not super long. The states opening is not terrible. It's actually pretty succinct overall. I doubt that means she will start streaming.
The matter I'm calling is
As if we don't know.
D101CR 2024-13, State of New Mexico versus Alexander Ray Baldwin.
Hopefully you guys are hearing the audio now. Hopefully you guys can hear
All right,
it.
jury.
Yes?
What are you doing?
There we go.
Oh, I have it on. So I have already sworn you in, if you'll recall, yesterday. Okay. And now I'm going to explain some trial procedure. First of all, I want you to know this trial is being filmed, but you are not being filmed, and you will not be filmed at all throughout within the courtroom, okay? All right. So I'm going to, this is a criminal case, as you know. I'm going to
Just reassuring
reread
the
the
jury.
grand jury indictment. It's very formal, so we'll go with that. Count
gonna
one,
take it up to-
involuntary grant commission
We're going to skip
without
over
due
that.
caution, Fayette County, Santa Fe case and the instruction, along with those instructions previously given. Pay final instructions have
We're
asked
going
me.
to skip all of that.
No, my bailiff.
All right, we're going to skip that. We want this.
Thank you.
We
Good
want
morning.
this. I got to the wrong point.
When someone plays make-believe with a real gun in a real-life workplace, and while playing make-believe with that gun violates the cardinal rules of firearm safety, people's lives are endangered, and someone could be killed.
Now, that's not exactly the same kind of level of boom as like Karen Reed was framed. Karen Reed was framed was an entirely different level of boom. It's not a bad start for the opening statement overall, but I will note, he's not just playing make believe, right? He's actually on a workplace himself. He's doing work himself as well, right? So we can criticize that, but she's going to explain essentially the state theory of the case, and we're at 1.25, so we're at 25% faster than normal. Now, I just want to note this lawyer is really good. I really quite like her. She is, I think, the better lawyer in a lot of ways than Carrie Morrissey, although Carrie Morrissey does have some strengths. Carrie Morrissey is kind of the tiger or the like rhino charging. She just is here to get things done. She's much calmer. She's much more just like, I'm going to do the job.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this case is about. It's simple, it's straightforward. The evidence will show that someone who played make-believe with a real gun and violated the cardinal rules of firearm safety is the defendant, Alexander Baldwin. You will hear over the course of the next few days that in the fall of 2021, a movie called Rust began filming at the Bonanza Creek Ranch just south of Santa Fe in Santa Fe County. You will learn that this movie was a Western with a lot of gun action.
As pretty much all Westerns do.
It was a real-life workplace for many people. But you will hear this workplace was on a tight budget. And you will learn that some of the people who were hired to work at this workplace were very inexperienced. And one of those was the armorer, a very young woman named Hannah Gutierrez Reed. You will hear testimony from crew members who worked on the set, who will tell you that to them, Ms. Gutierrez's inexperience was obvious. You will also learn that this workplace has some talented people. And one of those was the director of photography, a vibrant 42-year-old rising star named Helena Hutchins.
Now, I'm just going to note, they were told basically to limit how much they said about Helena Hutchins, but here they are, they're commenting about how she's a rising star. I don't think this is improper, but it is kind of flirting with the issue.
You will also learn that the director of this film was Joel Souza, another talented individual who cares deeply for his projects. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that like in many workplaces, there are people who act in a reckless manner and place other individuals in danger and act without due regard for the safety of others. That, you will hear, was the defendant, Alexander Baldwin, the lead actor on this film. You will learn that this movie began filming on or about October 6, 2021. But the defendant did not arrive on set to begin working until about October 13th. And you will learn that prior to arriving on the set to work, he requested to be assigned the biggest gun available. So he was assigned this revolver, a replica of...
Now, I'm just going to say, I don't think they had a whole lot of guns available because there are bigger guns than this, right? They could have found a bigger gun. But, okay, they hand him this thing. It's not the biggest gun you can find. That, I think Pieta says it's a 7.5-inch barrel. It's a 45 long Colt, so it is a good size thing. The other thing is him asking for the biggest gun around doesn't actually mean crap because you could totally get killed with a 22, right? So the other thing is I'm just going to note there's not a lot of calibers that you'd probably see on that set. In terms of handguns, you're going to see 357, you're going to see 38, you're going to see 45 long Colt. That's pretty much the range. So she's making a big deal about the, this being the biggest gun around. It's not actually a huge deal. So
an 1873 single action revolver manufactured by Pieta Firearms in Italy. You will hear from Alessandro Pieta, who will tell you he manufactured this gun. And he will tell you he manufactured it in 2015. And he will explain the quality control measures that Pieta Firearms follows in order to ensure that firearms that are manufactured by Pieta Firearms don't have any problems or issues. Mr. Pieta will tell you that this firearm he himself manufactured, and that when Pieta sent it to EMF, which is the company that distributes firearms for Pieta Firearms in the United States, this gun was in perfect working condition. You will hear from Justin Neal, who is a representative of EMF, a company out of California that has historically been known to provide firearms to the movie industry. Mr. Neal will tell you that when EMF received this firearm in 2017, it was in perfect working order. And in fact, when EMF had this firearm, it was subjected to numerous quality control inspections because it was used as a show gun at gun shows. The evidence will show that in September of 2021, an individual by the name of Seth Kenny was contacted by the folks with Rust Production.
Seth Kenny, by the way, is going to be a big boogeyman in this trial. Seth Kenny is going to be a big deal. The defense is going to point the finger at Seth Kenny a lot. They're going to be saying basically Seth Kenny is the real villain here. He's where the live round must have come from. They're going to make a big argument about this. Seth Kenny is the bad guy. So them raising Seth Kenny is kind of, putting that, but I mean, he is part of the story. So, yep.
They asked Mr. Kenny if he would be able to provide some firearms for the filming, for use during the filming of Rust. You will learn that Mr. Kenny owns PDQ Firearm and Prop. It's a duly licensed firearms dealership. Mr. Kenny then contacted EMF and ordered several single-action replica revolvers. And in September, or on September 29, 2021, Mr. Kenny purchased this gun. And you will hear that Mr. Kenny received it from EMF, and it was in perfect working order. The only thing that Mr. Kenny did to this gun was to insert the firing pin.
Now, one of the things we're going to hear from the defense is basically this notion that that this gun would have been in poor condition, that this is a shabby gun, that this is a weak gun, that this gun has been used and worn and so forth. So that is its own, that's its own issue here. The prosecution is going to do a pretty good job of shutting that down, I think.
Because since it was a show gun, it didn't have a firing pin. But you'll learn that that's a very easy step. All he had to do was just insert the pin, and that's it. And then Mr. Kenny had the firearms, this one and some other firearms, transferred to the set of Rust at the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And on October 13th, 2021, the defendant was supposed to have a training session with this gun and this young armorer. But you will see that during this training session, the defendant had somebody or a couple of people filming him while he's running around shooting this gun. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, or you'll hear during this trial, the use of the words prop gun. And you'll learn a prop gun is this real gun. It's not a toy. It's not made of rubber. It's a real gun. You will also see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that during the days before that fateful October 21st day, the defendant handled this firearm multiple occasions. You will see video footage of the defendant firing this firearm, working perfectly fine. But you'll see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that each time the defendant handled this firearm, he did not do a safety check with that inexperienced armorer. And you'll hear that the reason he didn't do a safety check is because he didn't want to offend her.
See, this is the thing is when I have said repeatedly that Baldwin is the reason why Baldwin is being charged, this is the kind of thing that screws him. Because if Baldwin had said, you just don't, why didn't you do a safety check with the gun when it was handed to you? And if he'd said basically just That's not how it's done. It's a film set. I don't do a safety check. The armorer and the AD do a safety check, and I don't do a safety check. Then I don't think he'd be looking at charges. I think he'd be fine. Or better than that, better than making that statement is if he just said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't have anything to say. I need my lawyer here. I want a lawyer present with me because there was a fatality. You guys want to ask me questions about it. The gun was in, I need a lawyer, right? I don't want to do anything. I don't want to, I don't want to anything, right? So that would be, they wouldn't be able to say things like that. And they're going to bring in armorers who say, listen, the actor doesn't need to do a check of the gun. And you know what? Had that been all that there was, Baldwin would not be looking at charges. They would not be able to proceed with anything against Baldwin. It would be over. It would be done. Finito. But that's not what he said. What he said instead was, I cannot, I don't, he's like, I didn't want to offend her. That is a stupid statement. That is an absolutely idiotic statement that makes it sound like he was being reckless because he just doesn't want to, he just doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. Don't like that. So, are you suggesting that maybe people shouldn't talk to the police? Yes. Yes. If he hadn't talked to the police, I think Baldwin would not have been charged here. So yeah, I absolutely think he'd be doing great. So, yep.
The evidence you will see will paint a real life picture of a real life workplace where this defendant mishandled this gun. You will see him using this gun as a pointer to point at people, to point at things. You will see him cock the hammer when he's not supposed to cock the hammer. You will see him put his finger on the trigger when his finger's not supposed to be on the trigger. You will hear about numerous breaches of firearm safety with this defendant and this use of this firearm. And the evidence will show that on the morning of October 21st, 2021, the camera crew walked off set. And you will learn that one of the reasons that camera crew walked out is because they were concerned over safety breaches with the use of firearms. The evidence will show that the morning of October 21st started out a couple of hours behind. They filmed some scenes at this church on the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And you will see that one of those scenes required the defendant to pull out his gun. This was in the morning. Pull out his gun. And you'll hear the director tell him, pull it out and hold it. And the first time, you'll see evidence the defendant does what the director tells him. But you will hear the director tell you that many times the defendant would do his own thing. So then the director in the morning asked him, okay, do it again, just like you did now. The defendant pulls out the gun, but this time he cocks the hammer. The evidence will show they then broke for lunch. And around 1:30 or so, they came back to this church to do what's called a blocking. The evidence will show that Ms. Hutchins wanted to do a blocking for an insert. And you will learn what a blocking is, just working out the details of the moves of the actor. Wasn't even.
So blocking is basically you're just trying to figure out how the how the scene is going to look, and the basic mechanics of all of this. You're going to figure out where do I need the camera to be? Where do I need and if I have the camera there, am I getting the right view of the scene? What's the background look like? And the thing is for blocking, they didn't need him to have a gun at all. Baldwin should not have had a gun in his hand for blocking. What they should have done, and what many armorers have said they would have done for a blocking scene, is just, here's a chunk of wood. Like, literally just like, you know, here's like a gun-shaped stick would work. Here's a bottle of hot sauce. Here's, you know, whatever else. Like, you don't need to give him a gun for the blocking scene, right? It's just like, that's it. That's all you're doing, right? And so they could have used a plastic gun. They could have used a bent stick. They could have used like anything, and that would have been fine. Yeah, a banana. So he didn't need to have a gun at all there. So yep. Yeah, like a blue gun would have been fine. So yep.
Rehearsed. You will hear from one of the witnesses who walked into the church and saw the defendant kind of playing with his gun. And then you will see evidence or hear evidence that.
By the way, the phrase walked into the church and saw the defendant playing with his gun. Any other context, that sentence has a very different meaning. But yeah.
Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were talking to the defendant about doing this insert. And the insert was just supposed to be from here to here. And it was supposed to be of the defendant just slowly taking his gun out of his holster, and just holding it at an angle. The evidence will show that someone asked the armorer to bring the defendant's gun to him. And she did. She brought it into the church, showed it to David Halls, who you will learn was the first assistant director. The gun was empty. Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. But then you will hear that Ms. Gutierrez was given the gun back, and she took it and loaded it with dummy rounds. And what you will learn is that dummy rounds are inert rounds. They look like real rounds, but they are very easy to tell that they're not because they'll rattle. Ms. Gutierrez then went back to the church, showed the revolver to the first assistant director very fast. They only checked about 3 rounds, very quick. And they missed 1 round. You will learn that one of the rounds in that revolver was a real round. And the evidence will show that Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. And what you will learn is that once again, the defendant failed to do a gun check or a safety check with this armorer. So he takes the firearm, puts it in his holster. Then Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were doing this blocking. And the evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant, again, did his own thing. You will hear from an individual by the name of Kent Jorgensen. Mr. Jorgensen will tell you that he's been involved in drafting and revising movie set safety rules. You will learn that these movie set safety rules require actors, like the defendant, to treat every firearm as though it's loaded, to never point a firearm at another person, and to never put your finger on the trigger unless you're prepared to shoot or to destroy whatever's in front of you. The evidence will show that on October 21st, 2021, after that lunch break, the defendant once again violated those set safety rules. And during this blocking, the director had instructed him to just slowly take out that gun and just hold it at an angle. But you will see that the defendant takes it out quickly the first time, points it. And you will hear witness testimony who will tell you the first time he does it, his finger is on or around the trigger. He does it again, takes it out very fast, points it. And once again, you will hear testimony that his finger was on or around the trigger. And the evidence will show that that third and fatal time, he takes it out once again, fast, hammer's cocked, he cocks the hammer.
Yeah. This gets into like phrasing. That final time he takes it out real fast, hammer's cocked. It's like, oh God, okay. We're gonna try to be adults here.
Points it straight at Ms. Hutchins and fires that gun, sending that live bullet right into Ms. Hutchins' body. You will learn that this bullet was a .45 caliber round that entered Ms. Hutchins' body right underneath her right underarm. It perforated her right lung. It traveled through her spine, lacerating her spinal cord, and then it exited on the left side of her back. That bullet then went into Joel Souza's right shoulder, and it came to rest in his back, from where doctors removed it once he was transported to St. Vincent's Hospital here in Santa Fe. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that Ms. Hutchins did not have the same fate. You will see the aftermath of the shooting, and you will see medics frantically working to save Ms. Hutchins, to stabilize her, to transport her, to airlift her to UNM Hospital. But the damage from that bullet was too much. Ms. Hutchins succumbed to her injuries and bled to death. The evidence will show that meanwhile, after the shooting, the defendant began to claim he didn't pull the trigger. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that's not possible. You will hear from Mr. Pieta himself, who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of the trigger.
Now, I'm just going to say that is not entirely true, because there is at least one way that this gun can fire without a pull of the trigger. And that is if you have the gun, and I'm going to record a little video clip for this, but for right now, let us imagine that we're going to use the hot sauce as the gun. So you got the gun, and if the hammer of the gun is all the way down, there are a number of positions for the hammer. It is all the way at rest is one position. Quarter cock, half cock, or full cock are the options, right? Those are your options. If it's all the way down at rest, and if that is on a live cartridge, and you smack it hard enough, then it can go off and it can fire. So this is why the traditional loading for firearms is load 1, skip 1, load 4. And then you end up with the hammer resting on an empty cylinder. So that said, we do hear, I see somebody says, we do hear Pieta noting that, in fact, like Pieta does say, the only way for it to go off is to pull the trigger. Pieta's not entirely correct, but he doesn't get cross-examined on that point, or at least not successfully. So I'm also being asked, can I give a dummies for dummies? So let's talk about what a film dummy is. I should go out to my garage and get a blank. I don't have 45 long Colt blanks. I do have a bunch of 9mm blanks. I will go get one. So this is a film dummy, and you'll note from the right angle, the film dummy looks exactly like a real cartridge. It looks like a real, like this could go off. But from another angle, you can see that it's got a hole punched in the primer. So like the primer's punched out. So what are the essential ingredients to, I guess the essential ingredients to making somebody die with a gun? Like, what are the essential ingredients to one of these things that shoots? Well, there are several components. The first one is the bullet itself. Often people refer to this as a bullet. That is not technically correct. This is a cartridge. The whole package is a cartridge, right? The whole package is the cartridge. This is instead, like, you know, that's the term for it. The bullet, properly speaking, is the end, the piece that flies out. The projectile is the bullet. So that is sort of component 1. Component 2 is the brass casing. The case is the brass thing. What does the case do? Well, it holds everything together, and it also helps the cartridge fit into the gun and helps seal that whole end such that it will fire properly. So that is your casing. The case is one of the components that you end up left behind with, and it's actually the only one that you can reuse normally when you shoot when you actually shoot at something. So that's our next step. This one is the next piece is a primer, and the primer is missing from this particular piece. The primer, it normally sits in that little pocket, and you see how that little pocket has a hole in it that enters into the rest of the casing. The reason why is because the primer is a little piece that fits in there, and the primer is essentially the ignition sequence for this, right? And lots of explosive trains basically go along an ignition sequence. So let's say you've got some C4, right? You're not going to ignite your C4 just by like putting a match to it. It doesn't work that way. And so you'll have a smaller explosive, a more sensitive explosive that ignites the larger explosive that then goes and blows up. This is the same way. The gunpowder itself is actually fairly resistant to going off. It's fairly resistant to explosion or to impact and so forth. If you take that gunpowder and you smack it with a firing pin, it doesn't do anything doesn't do anything. So you have the primer, which has a much more sensitive compound in it that is impact sensitive, that then gets hit by the hammer, and because it's impact sensitive, goes off, and the flame shoots through that hole and lights the gunpowder. And then the gunpowder itself, it doesn't actually explode in modern guns. It burns really fast and generates a lot of gas and pushes it out. But so yeah, and the definition on explode is kind of a thing. So you'd have a primer in there, and the last component is the powder itself, the gunpowder. So why do you need these? Well, you can have all sorts of different scenes where you might need a dummy. And so one example is on a Western, you see all the people with the bandoliers of cartridges. Well, you need something that looks like a cartridge that fits into those such that you can have it and it looks real, right? So you have to have something that looks real but isn't a live cartridge. So they use dummies for that. You might also have a scene, let's say you've got a scene where somebody's at home, it's late at night, and late at night, and they hear somebody is breaking in, somebody's starting to kick the door down. You might have a scene where they go into their desk, open their, open the drawer, pull out a revolver, and you see them load the gun, right? Well, if you're showing that action, if you're showing that moment where somebody's loading the gun, or you see them loading a magazine, they don't want to do that with live ammunition. They want to do it with a film dummy. So film dummies are for all the things where you will see the cartridge, but not where it's going to be, not where it's going to be fired. And the reason why you need the film dummies for that, you use them also in revolvers, because a revolver has the cylinders that are open to the front. So you can actually see whether or not it's loaded based on whether or not you can see the bullets in the casing, sticking in those cylinders. So you have to use these dummies to make that, to make it look right. Otherwise it looks stupid. I can tell you, Mrs. Runkle and I were watching a movie at one point, and somebody pulls out a revolver and threatens somebody with it. And I was like, that gun is not loaded. And she's like, stop it. And I was like, it isn't though, right? It's obviously not loaded. And I would have been impressed if they were making a scene of it, but it was actually just that they did poor things. So how do you tell a dummy from a real one? Well, if you pick up a dummy here, you can actually feel it as you handle it. Like just by doing this, I can feel that this is a dummy because I can feel that there is a metal BB in it that makes it so I can feel it, right? I can feel that moving around as I do this. You can also hear it. Like You can hear that jingle, right? So this is easy to tell. And on this case, you can see it because you can see the absence of the primer, and no primer means no boom. So there are, there's multiple ways that you can tell. I can tell the difference between this and a live cartridge, blindfolded, and wearing earplugs, right? Blindfolded and with earplugs, I can still tell this apart from a live cartridge. The other way that they will mark them as, as like visible or as is some of them, they will drill a hole through the side. And so they'll drill a hole, and then you can tell because it's got that hole, and you go, oh, right, this is a dummy because it obviously has no gunpowder. Would the gun weigh more with real rounds in it? Maybe so much that someone could tell. You're not going to be able to tell well enough because if you the weight of the gunpowder versus not is not going to do it, right? It's not going to, if you handle enough, you can tell by weight alone. Loaded versus unloaded, yes, maybe because of the weight of the lead, but and somebody says you could tell, but would you bet your life on it? The thing is, if I was betting my life on it, I would make sure to do it with my eyes open and my ears open and check 100%. I'd be certain before I handled it. So, that's a dummy. A dummy looks real, but doesn't go boom, right? Looks real, no boom. A blank. What does a blank look like? The end of a blank is crimped shut, right? The end of a blank. And so a blank doesn't look anything like a real cartridge. You can tell the difference super easily, right? It's just, you can just, boom, I can spot this. Visually, you can tell something is a blank just by looking at it. You could tell from like 5 feet away. If somebody was holding it up, you'd be like, oh, right, that is a blank. You might not be able to tell whether it's like what size of blank, because blanks come in different amounts. Quarter load, half load, full load. But what blanks are used for is when the gun actually needs to go bang. So like if I've got a scene where, like, let's say I am the video store, like I'm the clerk at a, at a gas station in this video scene, and some guy walks in and he's robbing the place and he's got a great big gun. And, he's robbing the place and I'm giving him the money. And afterwards, I'm like, he's turning to walk out. And then he goes, oh, wait, you saw my face. Turns around and there's a big bang, right? That bang is via blank. They're not doing it with a dummy. And they're certainly not doing it with a live cartridge because I don't want to get shot, right? So they're just using it with a blank. Blanks you will also see. This is a good point from C.A. McDivitt here. Blanks are also used to power ramset guns. Yep, absolutely. Blanks are used for a few different purposes, but yeah. So that's a blank. You get the bang, doesn't look real. So yeah. And then lastly, and the other thing about a blank is that while it can be dangerous at a short distance, it's not going to shoot like a full projectile. So if you are 30 feet away and I shoot at you with a blank gun, you're not going to die. What is a ramset gun? A ramset gun is a powder-actuated nail gun. So it uses gunpowder with a blank to drive a nail into a hard surface. You will see a ramset gun used, for instance. Yes, blank round. Guns can be blank guns. Guns can be modified to be blank firing only, but you're right, blank round. So the ramset gun, you'll see it if you watch The Wire. The one character uses a ramset gun for various purposes. But yeah, it's a type of nail gun. So yeah, and thank you for catching me when I'm tired. So yeah, live cartridges, they have no place on a film set like this. They have no place on a fictional film set. They should not be there ever, 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 right? They should never be there. And the reason why they should never be there is because there's no need for them. The only time that you would actually use live rounds on a filming scene is for something like Mythbusters, or maybe for something, some YouTube videos or something. Like if I'm showing you my skill as a shooter, then I will probably use a live cartridge to do it, right? If I'm on the range. But if you're doing like a Mythbusters thing, if the Mythbusters thing was like, can we make, how many phone books does it take to be bulletproof? Something like that. Then you would need a live cartridge. But you're not going to be doing that in a scene where, on a movie like this. There's just no purpose for it. So that's kind of our distinction here. All right, let's go.
You will hear from firearms experts who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of that trigger. The evidence will show that law enforcement officials arrived at the scene on October 21st after the shooting and immediately took this gun into their custody. Then later, they asked the FBI for assistance in processing this gun for forensics and examination. You will learn that the gun and some ammunition that was taken from the set and from PDQ Arms.
Sorry about that, folks. I'm showing you the video. Sorry about that.
Were sent to the FBI for analysis. You will learn that the gun first went to the DNA section of the lab, where a DNA analyst found the defendant's DNA on this gun. And then the gun was transferred to the firearms and tool mark section of the lab, where a firearms examiner examined this gun very carefully and closely. Bryce Ziegler, who is the firearms examiner for the FBI, will tell you that when he received this firearm, he first examined it. He didn't see any defects, didn't see any modifications. He tried and he checked the hammer in the 3 different positions, cocking positions. He checked the quarter cock position, fine. Checked the half cock position, fine. Checked the full cock position, fine. And when he held it in the full cock position, you will hear that hammer held until he pulled the trigger. You will also hear that Mr. Ziegler.
Now, there is going to be a big issue here. There's going to be a big issue on this one as to whether or not this gun was in proper working order. And the reason why is because the FBI eventually does destructive testing on this gun. And so the defense is going to make big noises about this. The defense is going to make big, huge noises about it. So, yeah.
Test fired this gun 12 different times.
Because it's a big
and
trial.
And each time, that gun fired as it was designed.
Because it's a big trial, they need more people.
When he pulled that trigger, it fired. And he will tell you that not once did this gun malfunction or discharge on its own. Now, the evidence will show that because the defendant had been claiming that he didn't pull the trigger, Mr. Ziegler suggested one last test to the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Ziegler told the Sheriff's Department that he could do what's called an accidental discharge test. He obtained authorization to do this test. And you will hear that he left that test for last because that test could potentially damage the gun. Mr. Ziegler went forward after he received this authorization and conducted the accidental discharge test. And you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that during that test, a couple of the internal components of this firearm damaged. You will hear that the trigger sear and the full cock hammer notch were damaged during the accidental discharge testing. The evidence will show, however, that before this accidental discharge testing by the FBI, this gun functioned and worked perfectly fine. You'll see the video footage of the multiple occasions during which the defendant used this firearm on the set, and each time he fired it, it was working just fine. And in fact, you'll hear evidence that the defendant himself admitted in December of 2021 that this gun didn't have any mechanical problems. You will hear from the 2 of the country's leading experts on firearms forensics, Michael Haig and Lucian Haig. And they will tell you that they examined the revolver and the damaged pieces extensively. They will tell you that the damage to the full cock trigger notch is consistent with the accidental discharge testing that was conducted by the FBI. Lucian Haig will tell you that in August of 2023, he examined the trigger sear, the other piece, and that when he looked at it initially with the naked eye, there was nothing wrong with it. He couldn't see anything. But then he put it under the microscope, and he noticed some kind of rough microscopic diagonal lines on the surface.
So this is the prosecution getting ahead of the defense theory. They're telling the jury this stuff, even though it's bad for them. They're telling us that it's awful for, like, because it's awful for them. And so they're letting us know that it's there just so that ahead of time they can deflate it a bit. This is important trial strategy. When do you do this? When do you not do this? If you watch the Karen Reed trial, Lally didn't do this nearly enough. So, yeah.
Surface of the trigger sphere. And since at the time he did not know how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test, he opined that these very small microscopic lines were likely not caused by the FBI accidental discharge testing, but he could not exclude that as the source of those lines. Then a few weeks ago, Mr. Haig will tell you that he spoke with Mr. Ziegler and he learned how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test. Mr. Ziegler explained that he affixed that firearm onto a fixed platform and then struck the firearm on 6 different planes with a rubber mallet. And Mr. Ziegler explained to Mr.
6 different planes, by the way, just means 6 angles, right? They had 6 angles that they smacked it around with. Now, the defense is going to say this is totally unnecessary. Baldwin never said that he smacked the gun or hit the gun or anything like that. But I can tell you that if they didn't do this test, you know what Baldwin's defense would be? Baldwin's defense would be maybe he accidentally bumped himself with the gun when he drew it. They would absolutely be arguing that he could have bumped it. So yeah, that's a thing.
Haig that he had not affixed the mallet to another fixed device. Instead, he did it freehand. Mr. Haig will tell you, with his 50 plus years of experience as a firearms forensics expert, he opined or concluded that those very tiny microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sphere were likely caused by the FBI's accidental discharge test. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of how those tiny microscopic lines got on that trigger sphere, these firearms experts will tell you that those would not affect the functionality of this firearm. At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to conclude and be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that on October 21st, 2021, that gun the defendant had asked to be assigned worked perfectly fine as it was designed, and that the fatal and one of the main problems that afternoon of October 21st was that the defendant didn't do a gun safety check with that inexperienced armorer. He pointed the gun at another human being, caught the hammer, and pulled that trigger in reckless disregard for Ms. Hutchins' safety. And you will be convinced that the only true and just verdict in this case, so that true justice can be served, is a verdict of guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Thank you.
That was short. It was direct. It was to the point. It was a pretty good opening. It was not like fantastic. It was not fireworks. It was not like, wow, I got to write home about this because this is, this is amazing. Although writing home is just like, yeah. So, this is what we're getting on this one, right? It's just, so I think they did a really good job at the opening. I said before, I think a B+ for the state, for the prosecution there. So B+ for the prosecution. Now, it was really refreshing to see this opening after like Lolly. I'm going to tell you, there are some places where the lawyers do better and there's places where the lawyers do worse. There are, these different issues and so forth, but all through it, we're going to see lawyering that is pretty good, right? The lawyering is at every stage, at least pretty good. So that's important. Let's go through some super chats and then we're going to move on to the defense opening. So Sandy, thanks so much for doing this recap. Thank you for joining me. Gina Gomez, hello all. Sunglasses emoji. Thank you so much. Sandy, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Flowers for Algernon. Thank you for the YouTube membership. Cootie Pootie Tootie. Did you get a hold of your eyeball guy? I had to leave him a voicemail. So Ella, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. M2HMGHB. Have you checked to see if the Pieta will fire with a hammer down on a primed case? That's the reason you don't put 6 rounds in the cylinder. I'm probably going to go out. I'm going to bring it out to the range. And I'm going to bring a mallet to the range, and we're going to see, we're going to see if I can get it to fire on a, in that fashion. We're going to see, how I can do it. And Belle Feinstein, wow, I wasn't expecting this stream. I just finished dinner. I hope you ate Runkle. I did not eat Runkle. I had chicken. Mia Hurrens, thank you so much for becoming a member. Thank you. Just because hand in an L shape would have worked fine. Yep, absolutely. Hollyberry, thank you for the very generous donation there. Thank you. Danny Royal, thank you so much. Oliver, I'm not going to read that again. On one hand, Baldwin is a knob. On the other hand, prosecutors are vampire ghouls who get paid to ruin innocent lives. So they can all bad things. We're not going to read that either. I appreciate that, but let's not get me demonetized or booted here. Just because Steven has some of the dumbest expressions. It's just his face. That Kelly D, how would you defend this case? I would like to think I would do as well as the defense is currently doing. I don't know if I'm accurate about that, but I would like to think that. So yeah, that's kind of the dream there. Joy W101, I have been part of replay crew for your live streams, enjoying your coverage. Thank you so much. Gina Gomez for the hot sauce fund. Thank you. Jolene, how hard is it to own a gun in Canada? You need to take a course to get, to show that you've got sufficient knowledge. You've got to pass a test, and then you have to apply for it. During that application process, they do background checks to make sure. And so you can get bounced on the background checks if you've got a criminal record, if you've had past police involvement, if you've had mental health issues, any of these things. The other thing that they do in your background check is they will check with your exes. So if your ex-wife, says, no, this guy's a psycho, he should not have a gun, you probably won't get a gun. So that's sort of all of that. Now, in terms of the handguns, they have banned transfers, so you can't get a new handgun. I have not got my business firearms license yet either, so I'm waiting for that before I start doing anything. So yeah, we'll see about that. Maggie May, thank you for the 10 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Claude Simeon, in trial mentioned SAG guidelines for live rounds. There are SAG guidelines for live rounds. They're not used often. So, yeah. Jamie F., thank you, Ian. Thank you. Allison, thanks for the recap. It's a lot for one day. Take care. Thank you. Christina B., HDR tomorrow. How do you think it'll go? 5th or no? I think they're going to try to ask her questions that she can't plead the 5th about. They're going to ask her questions that don't implicate her. But I suspect she's going to plead the 5th about a lot of things and possibly everything. AJ Lowe, don't email Hannah's lawyer and tell her, don't do this. This is not a good idea. This is not sensible behavior to email the lawyer and tell him what to do with the client. That is not cool. So no, don't do that. That is stay out of it. Stay out of the poop. That applies in both directions. Stay out of the poop. Gina Gomez, please support Runkle's Pro Bono Dream Team. So the goal is to do YouTube as the job and to stay and then to do law for free. So yeah. Annabelle Feinstein, comma's the bane of my writing life. Fair. I just had to make the joke. Iclops, a little bit more for the ProBunad Fund. Thank you. And Danny Royal, if Alec Baldwin didn't want a gun to go off, he should have been a responsible executive producer and blocked the scene with a rubber gun, as is the industry standard. That is kind of the notion there. So, yeah, and this is the thing. She might not plead the fifth on everything because she might be pissed at Alec. So it is possible. And MJ, thank you for the pro bono fund. All right, let us go ahead and have a look at, let's watch the defense opening. So here we go.
Mr. Spyro?
I do not like Trudeau. Trudeau is terrible. If Trudeau was not running for the Liberal Party, he would be being decried by other parties. Like, he is terrible. So we can get into that as a side thing. That's kind of my thing, is I want lawyering to be my side gig, but I want it to do it for free, right? I just want to
May I proceed?
just do it for free.
Good morning. This was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. He was an actor acting, playing the role of Harlan Rust. An actor playing a character can act in ways that are lethal, that just aren't lethal on a movie set. These cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. And I don't have to tell you much more about this because you've all seen gunfights in movies.
Now, I actually thought this was a bad start initially. And the reason why is, like, he's like, these cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. What cardinal rules? Neither you nor the prosecution have explained what cardinal rules you're talking about. And so you need to actually explain all of this. So, you need to kind of explain all of this. So, like, what cardinal rules are you talking about? Why are they not rules on a movie set? Why are, like, what is this? So I would have just said, like, I would have phrased it differently. I would have said the rules of gun safety are done differently on a movie set. Movie sets take very different steps to ensure safety because the precautions on a movie set are different than the precautions on a gun range. They're different than the precautions in your home. They are, it's its own world. That is a better way of explaining it, because the jury is going to be sitting there going, I don't know what he's talking about. You know, just remember the jury doesn't know the case yet, right? They don't get it.
And the reason that can happen is because safety is ensured before the actor. On this movie set, there were people responsible for ensuring the safety of the set and the firearm. Those people failed in their duties, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. The most critical issue in this case is how a real bullet got on a movie set. The evidence will show that real bullets are never supposed to be on movie sets.
And the thing is that is actually not the most critical issue. The most critical issue is not actually how it got on a movie set. It's what was done with the guns, right? So, but they're going to try to, direct all of that, right? They're going to try to, they want you to think like Seth Kenney got the ammo on, so he's the real villain.
Sets use dummies and blanks. Movie sets use dummies, fake inert bullets that look like real bullets. They don't go bang.
Yeah.
For when you want a close-up of the gun. You can't tell them apart from live bullets by looking at them, which is why live bullets can be nowhere near a movie set. And if the director wants a shot of the gun going, bang, poof, there's blanks that they can use. And those blanks look nothing like real bullets. And then
bang, poof, of course, immediately had people in the chat saying, we need bang poof merch. So if you click the link below, I think it's linked below, there is a link to where you can buy bang poof shirts, because bang poof
are used for those shooting scenes. And they'll play these videos that they described of Alec's firearm in the movie going bang poof, and people are conditioned to seeing people firing weapons and thinking that's a dangerous act. And they will play those videos and give you that image to try to tarnish him in your eyes. But that's not what happened here.
And this, I think, is really good. This is much better. I don't like the bang poof, but, you know, he's starting to get into his stride here.
This set, there was a real bullet, something that should never be on a movie set, something which has nothing to do with making a movie. And you will hear no evidence, not one word, that Alec Baldwin had anything to do with that real bullet being brought onto that set. The second critical issue in this case is, why did a real bullet get loaded into a prop movie gun? It is undisputed that the bullet was loaded into the gun by the armorer, the person on set whose responsibility it was to ensure the gun was safe. And so picture that moment of the armorer placing a live bullet into that firearm. You know, you hear the prosecutor say, you know, he did this or he performed in a certain way. He picked out the biggest gun as his prop. It's to tarnish him in your eyes. You will hear no evidence
like this.
whatsoever.
This is good. This is good.
No evidence that anything Mr. Baldwin did, that something he did in that moment, that horrible moment when she put that bullet in that gun,
I mean,
none of it had anything to do with Alec Baldwin.
Absolutely,
and finally,
you code change.
The first assistant director's job, the head of safety, Dave Halls, checks it before it goes to the actor. And he will tell you he made a tragic mistake. He failed to detect a live bullet. And Alec Baldwin had nothing to do with that either. So all this evidence that the prosecutor just outlined, all of it, has nothing to do with these critical issues. Nothing. Which leads us to this. The evidence will show that on a movie set, safety has to occur before the gun is placed in the actor's hands. In this case, this unique case on a movie set, the prop gun was placed in Mr. Baldwin's hands and cold gun was announced, meaning it had been checked and double checked by those responsible to ensure the gun was safe. It was
checked and double checked is a great line. It's been checked and double checked it's correct. It's like 100% correct, except that none of them checked it properly. But checked and double checked is a fantastic line. This is the part where his opening is good.
Just a prop. They all thought it was just a prop and could do no harm. The actor's job is to act, to rehearse, to choreograph his moves, to memorize his lines. He's Harlan Rust. He's an outlaw running for his life, who in the incident in question, he's pulling a 6-shooter to try to defend himself. That's why the gun has to be safe before it gets into the actor's hands. His mind is somewhere else, in the being of another, a century away, an outlaw. He must be able to take that weapon and use it as the person he's acting would.
No, that is not, like, this is where we're getting into a weaker place, because I'm like, okay, so now we're talking like method acting. And the thing is you can't do whatever you want with a gun on a movie set, right? You just can't do what you want with it. Like, let's say I've got a character who's supposed to take, 2 blank guns and sort of do a spin while holding the guns in the air and then turn and shoot the bad guys, right? So like doing a spin like this with the guns held up in the air and then turn and shoot the bad guys, right? Well, let's say I decide as the actor, I'm improvising, and I think that my character thinks it would be cooler if I hold the guns out like at my sides and do a spin pulling the trigger as I go. Well, now I'm shooting the guns in unsafe directions, even with the blanks. And I can tell you, I am going to be asked to leave that film set, right? You can't just go, oh yeah, that's what I think my character would do. Like, you've got to follow the safety directions, right? No.
Wave it, to point it, to pull the trigger like actors do in ways that would be lethal in the real world, but are not lethal on a movie set.
But if you F around with the gun, they could be lethal on a movie set, right? Like, let's say I'm doing like the same thing. Let's say I'm doing a film scene where I walk in, I'm shooting at people with blanks, and they drop to the ground as I shoot them with, blood packs exploding and whatever else. And then I decide it would be really cool to put the gun up to somebody's head and like do a killing shot from close range. Well, now I've just killed the guy with the blank. You can't just F around, right? These are guns. They have to be taken seriously. Ugh.
And I'm going to show you that scene now before lunch. And if we could just play action.
I'm gonna go find some help.
I don't need no damn help.
You're gonna die if we don't.
He's wounded on the run. So play again. Continue.
Harlan Rust. Did you stand up nice and slow, tossing your weapons you have?
He's on the church pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. Play.
We're actually getting the opening of like narrating the film. By the way, spoilers for if you do decide to go see Rust. I can tell you, I will wait to see Rust until it's like on an airplane. And yeah, wow, Helena was good. She was good. The cinematography is excellent in these clips, right?
One more. You good? Ready? Yeah. Harlan Rust. Did you get up nice and slow, tossing the weapons you have? Well, how close can I get right there? Joe, you want me to wait to give that line until he lands? Until Cameron lands?
Yeah.
Yep.
Setting this one. Draw your gun and look up. Move your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left?
This way.
So camera left for now. I'll stand right here for you. So whip it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Okay, so whip it out. Let me get this sort of greased. You ready? I'm like, ugh, don't like that line.
Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. Ready, and action.
Harlan Rust.
Do one more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
Ready?
Now I'm just going to note here. You see him pull it out? Where's his finger? Finger's right there on the trigger. That's not where a finger should be, but in a film, yeah. And I see Jensen isn't in the film anymore. There was a scheduling conflict. I suspect, although I don't know, I suspect scheduling conflict means he just wanted out. That's my suspicion.
Do one more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
They want him to do it again. There's no danger. They want him to do it again.
And set. Ready, and action.
Harlan Rust.
And there you hear the click. We're going to take that down to 1 time speed. We're going to take it down 1 time speed. You hear the click. We're going to take this down to 1/4 speed. 1/4 speed. At 1/4 speed, you can see him, you can see his thumb. So, he pulls it out. You can hear the click, and you see his thumb moving off the hammer, right? You see his thumb moving off the hammer. Now, I'm just going to say, this gun has a very gentle trigger pull. I got this thing. And you might be wondering, what is this stupid unit you've got in your hands here, Runkle? What is this stupid thing you've got? This is a trigger pull measuring device. Basically, you take the gun, you hold this in the trigger, and then the trigger will pull, and it'll tell you how much force that took to pull the trigger. So I use this to test test that. And it's actually a very light trigger. It's a fairly light trigger overall. And the thing is that it is very, very, very easy when you're pulling the hammer back. If your finger is on the trigger, it's very easy to pull that trigger in. It may not have been intentional, but this is why you keep your finger off the trigger when you're doing something like that. All right, we're going to take this back up to 1.25.
Nice.
Yeah, I have this make and model of the gun. I bought the same gun. Mine has a slight cosmetic difference, but it's functionally the same. So
It's a scene similar to scenes we've all seen in movies and television, performed by thousands of actors. And the scene that continues after lunch is the same scene. It's just not unfortunately captured on videotape. And the scene they envisioned and acted out, that prop gun was positioned in the afternoon so close to the camera that you could see inside, that you could feel it. You could feel that it was loaded, and it was loaded, of course, with dummies. Dummies to make it look like a real gun. But this one time, one of those dummies was a real bullet. The real bullet was not known to anyone in that church.
correct.
Amongst the actors, directors, and crew in the scene, everyone was doing exactly how they go about their business every day on a movie, not as if some lethal element had been included in the environment. You will see creativity and movement and everyone talking and vibrant. No one had any idea that this venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic they were creating. But it did. It entered.
Some of his lines are really good. This venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic we were creating. I'm like, dude, you just got the poetry, right? And yeah, watch Carrie's face here.
It's a scene similar to scenes we've all seen in movies and television, performed by thousands of actors. And the scene that continues after lunch is the same scene. It's just not unfortunately captured on videotape.
Do you see her reaction? We'll watch that again. When he says it's unfortunate that they didn't capture it on tape, this is because he's saying it's unfortunate that they don't capture the killing on tape.
After lunch is the same scene. It's just not unfortunately captured on videotape. And the scene they envisioned and acted out, that prop.
Let's take that down to, I don't know, half speed.
And this on videotape. And the scene they envisioned.
I don't know what she says there, but
acted out. That prop gun was.
I think that what she was saying, with, reading her lips as best I can. Let's try to read her lips.
Captured on videotape. And the scene they envisioned and acted.
I get one of two things. It's either, oh God, or the fuck. I suspect it was the fuck. Whoops. Oh, sorry about that. I see somebody says, no, it's not. I think it was what the F. That's my read on it, or just like the fuck. But yeah, now I might be demonetized. We'll see.
Out, that prop gun was positioned in the afternoon so close to the camera that you could see inside, that you could feel it. You could feel that it was loaded, and it was loaded, of course, with dummies. Dummies to make it look like a real gun. But this one time, one of those dummies was a real bullet.
Also possible.
The real bullet was not known to anyone in that church. Amongst the actors, directors, and crew in the scene, everyone was doing exactly how they go about their business every day on a movie, not as if some lethal element had been included in the environment. You will see creativity and movement and everyone talking and vibrant. No one had any idea that this venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic they were creating. But it did. It entered that place. It killed an amazing person. It wounded another, and it changed lives forever.
It killed an amazing person. It wounded another person. It's like Joel Souza's getting Joel Souza's like it's like, killed an amazing person, and also Joel Souza was present. Like it's not. I just feel like it's
And so to find out what happened on that movie set, you need to do something that the prosecutors could never do. You have to step back and remember what they were doing on a movie set. What were Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer, Joel Souza, the director, and Alec Baldwin, the actor, doing on Bonanza Creek Ranch? You know, movies and magic have always been closely associated. The first people that made movies were magicians. And this imagination that happens in movies, you know, King Kong, he can stand above a city, and Superman can fly, horses and snakes and gun battles. For this to all work,
the first movie makers were magicians. I'm like, okay, you're getting a little poetic. I'll grant you some license here, but you know, there's a certain point where it's just like, sir, we're starting to think you're enjoying the smell of your own farts a bit too much. I don't think we're there yet, but we're getting close. There is a line that I did have to make fun of, though, in the form of a shirt.
Cinematography, what Helena did to work, for acting to work, you have to be so close to the barrier of real and imagined that the viewer feels that they're there, that it's real. The viewer can't see strings from the stuntman. The stuntman must leap. The snake must hiss. And guns happen in movies all over this country for many decades. Bang, bang. You've all seen it.
So, if you want to buy a "The Snake Must Hiss" shirt, because I saw that and I was like, all right, I am totally making a "The Snake Must Hiss" shirt, and I am totally going to, you know, I'm ordering one of the "Snake Must Hiss" shirts for myself because I frankly think it is a little bit hilarious. I'm going to buy myself a "The Snake Must Hiss" shirt because, yeah.
Guns have been an element of theater and film and television since the earliest of times. Depictions of war and combat, Spartacus, it stirs audiences because it feels real. Later films, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, they showed the unvarnished realities of war. This ranch in Santa Fe, it had been the scene to many gunfights and movie scenes, well before Alec was even born. Laramie, Butch and the Sundance Kid, and these westerns.
So they have their first objection. Now, it is unusual for objections to happen at this stage, right? It is unusual to get objections here, but we're getting objections.
The evidence will show
at this stage
that
it's
guns
unusual.
are in movies because movies are about people's lives and guns are in people's lives. So let's talk about the evidence and how the lethal bullet got there. How did this happen and how did it unfold? The evidence will be the following. Everybody on a movie set has a role. The armorer armors, the director directs, the actor acts. They work in harmony, but they have a division of responsibility. Safety being important has the first assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls, above the armorer and sort of the safety of the set. And on that day in question, the cast and the creative directors and crew in the church, it's a fake church. Their actors are not in their normal clothes, it's costumes. There's debris falling from the ceiling, it's fake debris. And they yell out "cold gun." And that is an important term you're going to learn in this case. It means that the gun is cold. No one need worry. But even that requires a little bit more explanation. Cold gun doesn't mean no live bullets. There are for sure 100% no live bullets on movie sets. That's unimaginable. Cold means you don't even have the fake blank poof dump in it. You don't need to worry even about eye gear or earplugs for that fake bang. It means it's empty, inert, cosmetic, can do no harm. Cold guns can't hurt people. It's impossible. Literally impossible for a cold gun to hurt somebody. You could hurt you more by dropping it on your foot. And that's why these artists are carrying on in their art. Cold gun, all clear to go. And the armorer on this set hands a prop gun to Alec, like she had done times before, like people have done with him in movies for a generation. And he's there. He's in the movie set church with his movie set gear and his holster, and he takes his movie set gun. And he's deeply focused in that moment on his character. The artists, the crew members, they're moving around him. Again, no eye gear or earplugs, nothing to protect against. They carry on, they practice, they rehearse, they take a lunch break. Some folks leave, some don't. They continue the scene. Dave Halls, the head of safety, is actually practicing the movement so they can frame the footage that will happen after lunch. And the prop cold gun comes back. The prop cold gun comes back, cold gun. They call it again. Same gun, again, safe. The first assistant director, Dave Halls, head of safety for the entire film, A man with decades of experience comes and takes the additional step and inspects the gun, verifies again, cold gun. Everyone relax. Go back to focus on the making of a movie. There's nothing in the gun that can hurt anybody. And Alex sits on that pew. And the creative directors, the crew, they're moving.
This part is good, right? This is him, just relying on all of this. This is solid. I got no beef with this. This is exactly what he needs to be doing.
Around him, in front of him. And Harlan Rust, he begins, like the prosecutor told you, rehearsing, acting. This is a completely mundane, uneventful, routine act on a movie set. And so everybody carries on. Nobody fathomed, imagined, foresaw any possible danger. They moved around Alec as he practiced his draw. As the prosecutor put it, working out the details of the move in the actor. He does it again, does it in a different way. Nobody bats an eye. And they will tell you that the investigation revealed that Baldwin was practicing drawing and pointing the weapon of the scene with guidance and instruction from Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza. The gun goes off. Everybody's shocked. Alec is startled. He immediately says, I didn't mean to shoot I didn't pull the trigger. Immediately. What the hell just happened? They collectively exclaim. Shock turns to panic. 911 is called.
Doubtful.
Ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally. You said someone was shot? 2 people accidentally with gunshots as on movie set, Bonanza Creek Ranch. I'll connect you with medical dispatch. San Jose Fire and EMS, what's the location of the emergency? Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay. But this fucking AD that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions, this motherfucker. Did you see him lean over my table and yell at me? He's got protected guns. He's responsible for what's happening. Now, Mimi? No. I'm a script supervisor. How many people are injured? 2 that I know of. I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and it went off, and I ran out.
Accidentally shot on a movie set with a prop gun. The fucking AD, it was his responsibility. Not a word about Alec Baldwin. While they're en route, police, EMS, the cast and crew are outside trying to figure out what happened, frantic, talking to those responsible for the prop and its safety. The armorer is yelling, sorry. Hall's the first assistant director is panicked. The prop master, Sarah Zachary, I don't know exactly where she is at that point, but they check the gun feverishly. They take the ammo out of the gun. They look at it. What the heck happened? They go back to the prop cart that houses the ammo. They're touching the gun and manipulating the gun, emptying it. They go and move some stuff off the prop cart, trying to figure it out. Sarah Zachary, the head of props, will tell you she threw some stuff out. And eventually, of course, EMS and police arrive pretty soon thereafter. And Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza, the director, are transported to the hospital where Helena tragically passes away. And I'm not going to be asking questions about her condition after she was wounded or the medical interventions that followed. Her injuries, the efforts to revive her, are not in dispute in this case. The evidence will be there. The prosecutor may present some of these emotionally charged images, but we're not going to be asking questions about that, and it's not an issue in dispute in this case. You jurors are allowed to ask yourselves whether or not that should be the focus or the focus should be the evidence. So police enter the scene. They have lapel cameras.
So he's basically trying to downplay that by he's trying to downplay that they're going to see gore, that they're going to see injuries, that they're going to see all of this, right? So he's like, yeah, don't worry about that. So, yep.
Thank God they have lapel cameras. You want to see what happens? The evidence will show you can play the videotape. Want to see if they take the right gun? Play the videotape. Want to make sure what the people said or did, they're remembering correctly? Play the videotape. And so they immediately recover the prop gun and they secure it. That's off to the side. And the reason that you preserve things in the moment is so that you know what existed in the moment, the evidence in the moment, the people and the witnesses and what they said in the moment. These folks, the members of Rust, they'd never been through anything like this before. That is why what they originally said matters so much in this case.
And the thing is nobody has been through this before unless you happen to be on the set of The Crow, right? This is something that happens so vanishingly rare. I want you to just stop and think about, because I get some people who are like, they should never have guns on a movie set, right? And that is not true. Guns on movie sets are very safe when handled by proper armorers, proper like safety procedures, proper any of this, right? Because when you have that, just think about how many films you watch where they've got guns. I want you to think of how many TV shows you watch and how many episodes of TV shows you watch where they use guns. Like if you watch something like, I don't know, The Wire. The Wire had lots of shootings, right? Lots of gunfire overall. There, all of that is done that. When you think, if you hear that somebody on a film set has been killed, you're almost certainly not thinking somebody's getting killed with a gun. People get killed on film sets. People get killed on film sets kind of often, distressingly. It's probably something like a horse, or horses are real dangerous, by the by, or a, stunt people. People die doing stunts, right? People die doing stunts, and it's just a thing, right? And I gotta say, the stunt people don't get paid nearly enough. Stunt people get like, hey, we make enough to live, right? They don't make huge money. They're certainly not making like actor money or anything like that. They're making, day job money. But they get injured all the time. They get killed doing stuff, right? So, and it can be their fault, like they mistimed a jump or something, or it can be something that's completely not their fault, right? Somebody sets up the stunt and it's just not a good stunt. So, yeah. And I saw a thing about Keanu Reeves. He has in the past gifted stunt people with a ton of things. And I just want to say, Keanu Reeves is a real mensch from every report. Everybody I've talked to, because I talked to a bunch of film armorers about this, right? Everyone I've talked to who's worked with Keanu Reeves says he's a real sweetheart. He's a real nice person. I am a fan of Keanu Reeves just because of that. So, yeah.
If you remember anything I say today as the evidence proceeds, remember that. Look at the evidence of what the people of Rust said and did that day. Life changes, memories change. There are human motivations, internal pressure, external pressure. That's why preservation is so important. So the police continue. In terms of the prop cart and the prop ammo that's on the cart, it's manipulated, altered, kind of messy.
Yes.
And, at this accidental shooting on a movie set, the police begin to make some mistakes. No one had ever investigated a prop gun on a movie set before. They recover the prop gun, but they don't wear gloves. They don't have the prop car inside the crime scene. Someone moves it onto the crime scene. People start touching it and showing, okay, this is a dummy, this is a blank. And then they make another mistake that matters in this case with some more significance, which is that they don't secure the prop truck that houses the cart. See, that cart that they roll off comes from a truck where all of the ammunition, all of the firearms are, and that's where they're stored. They don't secure the prop truck for several days. And then the prop house that supplies the truck, that supplies the cart, they don't secure for over a month. A lot of mistakes. They had never investigated a case in a movie set. But they had the prop gun. That was key. And so they needed to figure out where the live bullet came from. They had the shell casing, Starline brass. That's the sort of make. You'll hear that phrase, Starline brass. And the police were right to focus on that. That was the lethal element. And so they work outward. Makes good enough sense. Folks around the ammo and the gun to be interviewed at the precinct. The armorer at the precinct. She loaded the live bullet. Halls, head of safety. He double checked. And Alec walks up to the police. You'll see this early today. And he says, I'm here, whatever you want to do, whatever you need me to do. Just tell me where to go.
I don't like this line of argument, because this line of argument is that we can infer a lack of guilt from cooperation with the police. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
And Sarah Zachary, the prop master who threw out the stuff at the cart, they missed her that night to bring to the precinct. But the rest of them at the precinct. And thankfully, we have the lapel cameras.
Good night, Valkyrie.
And then they cleared the gun outside after his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets.
Okay.
So which one was?
The one that was missing, the one that fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper.
I can pause it.
So there's an objection, may we approach? And you know what the objection is? The objection is why are you calling the evidence in trial? Why are you playing all these videos? That's what the prosecution is objecting to here. Why are you playing all this? This needs to be called out in trial.
I can turn this off. Move on. That was just a quick snapshot of the scene.
Let's approach John. This is Ms. Johnson.
They consented to do that.
All right. So at this point, they have an objection. There's a discussion. We don't actually get to hear what happens. I can tell you what happens from inference. What happens at this point is that the prosecution says, stop playing the videos, right? We said we were going to play, like we said that we could show some stills, that we could play a little bit of video, but they're basically calling their case in the opening. This is not proper. And and so the judge grants that and says, you don't get to run the videos after this. And this objection being sustained means that he can't run the videos. And after that, his opening goes off the rails. It starts to get rambling. It starts to get meandering. It starts to go in loops. And the reason why is because he gets taken off of his script because he didn't have a backup script for when he doesn't have the videos. So that we're not going to watch the last 2/3 of his opening, because the last 2/3 of his opening, or the last bit of his opening, is really bad. It is just not great. I don't like it much at all. So we're going to jump to Nicholas Lafleur. We're going to talk about the witnesses that we have, and we're going to talk about them briefly because I would like to get some sleep at some point. So we're going to talk about the witnesses. This guy here on the screen is Nicholas Lafleur. Nicholas Lafleur is, he's just a baby. he's a junior member of the Santa Fe Police Department. And he gets called out to this scene. He is terrified. And why do they play him here? Because this lets them run these videos, right?
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a truck.
So this lets them run videos from his body camera.
Both approximately 140 pounds, elderly male and young female.
So this lets them run those things, right? Somebody says I skipped NASA. What did I skip NASA? Okay. So this, they basically use this guy as a means of getting in his body camera footage. And the reason why they're leading off with him is because his body camera footage shows a lot of the chaos and the panic and the stress. That's why he's here, right? So now they put him up on cross, and he does not do all that well on cross. He doesn't enjoy cross a huge amount. But there's one moment that is worthwhile. So one of the things that happens is that on cross, they try to hit him with this one document that says accident in 3 places. One document says accident, accident, accident. And now Carrie is going to come back at that moment. So
Sorry, I know that's getting smaller and smaller, but I'm not sure what to do.
Do you want to help me out?
Do you see, no, it's not quite there yet. At the top of the page, do you see number 16? And there's a 16, and then there's a parentheses.
Yes.
What does it say?
Posted speed limit and actual.
What does posted speed limit and actual have to do with this incident?
I'm not too sure.
So here's the thing. The defense made a mistake. The defense made an oops. The defense made a screw up. Here's the screw up. They see this document. You can see this document says like accident quantity 3 withdrawn. And so they're saying, doesn't this document say accident? So doesn't this mean that it's an accident? The problem is that this document, what's happening with this document is that they ran everybody's driver's license, right? They collected everyone's driver's license and they ran all of the things. And because of that, it's coming up with all sorts of things about their driving record, like non-commercial class code D and, organ donor / true. I can tell you organ donor / true has nothing to do with this scene, right? Offense ID out of state has nothing to do with any of this. Traffic control device. And so the prosecution catches them in that mistake. And because they catch them in that mistake, they go over this for a long time. The prosecution dunks the football on this way too long. All right, so the next guy is Benavidez. Benavidez is a retired Santa Fe police detective. And basically, he is there to tell us some of the investigatory steps. So that is Benavidez. Benavidez is this guy right here. He is not super important. He's just there to tell us, I attended on this scene. It was crazy. There was tons of people. So many people. So many people. Dunks the football. Okay. Spikes the football. You can tell how much I do sports ball, right? You can tell how much
Possible because I didn't have a holster for it, so I was trying to hold it so I didn't pull the trigger because I didn't know if it was empty or loaded or not. And because
so basically he also seizes the gun, he takes the gun, and so that is really, what the defense gets out of this guy is, what prosecution gets out of this guy is essentially like, okay, he attends at the scene, he's the guy who claims who seizes the gun, he's the guy who seizes the prop cart, he's the guy who all of these things, right? What defense gets out of him is, well, wouldn't it have been better to keep people from wandering around everywhere, talking to each other, poking things? And he's like, you are correct, that would have been better. So he is not momentous. I will say, day one, nothing super momentous happens day one. Just as your sort of warning there. The next guy up is this guy.
Truth and nothing but the truth? All right, have a seat talking to the microphone.
Have a seat here.
This guy's testimony is 0 minutes. And the reason why his testimony is 0 minutes is because he does one thing. He goes to the hospital where Joel Souza is being treated, and they remove the bullet from Joel and give it to this dude so that it can be used as evidence. So he's like, yeah, I went to the hospital. They took the bullet out of Joel. They gave me the bullet. I came back and I logged it into evidence because that's what I was there for. He is the bullet courier. So, he badly needs a suit that fits, but that's his role. That's it. His cross-examination is basically, did you hear anybody say that it was Baldwin's fault during this? Next up, we get Marissa Popple. And she starts out, she is smirky. She is every bit as smirky as Baldwin is. Gail, please leave politics out of the chat here. This is not a politics chat. So,
us to pay for the testing ourselves, or if the FBI is assisting with us, sometimes they can do additional testing that maybe our local lab wouldn't be able to do.
I want you to.
So she does crime scene investigation. She also explains what blanks are, what dummies are. She is also the person who investigates at she's the person who investigates Seth Kenny's place, right? That's her spot in this, right? She does all of these things. And her testimony at this stage is kind of uninteresting. I say kind of uninteresting because she doesn't get interesting until the next day. The next day, she gets interesting. So, with that in mind, we're going to skip the rest of her testimony for day one because it is boring and we don't need to do that to ourselves. We can just like watch the interesting parts because that's what this is about. Her testimony on direct is not super critical. This is basically like building the foundation of a house. Nobody lives on the foundation. Nobody goes and buys a house because they're like, ooh, I'm going to buy this house. It's got an amazing foundation. I mean, you might not buy a house if it's got a crappy foundation, but nobody goes to buy a house because they're like, oh my God, the foundation is amazing. It is like the best thing ever. I love this foundation. Right? You don't do that. But it's important. If the foundation of the house sucks, then then the house is going to suck, right? That is kind of a thing, right? So Thomas, I'm not going to play his voicemail to his daughter. If anybody wants to hear Alec's voicemail to his daughter, you can check that out on your own time. This trial is not about whether Alec sucks as a person. It's not about his views on guns. It's not about his views on Trump. It's not about his views on anything, right? It's not about Alec as a person, except to the extent that it leads to this tragedy. So, yeah. Okay, so on cross-examination, let's talk about what happens on cross. And I'm just going to note, the cross of this witness is like, the cross and redirect and recross is like 2 freaking hours. It starts at 1 hour and 15 minutes and ends at 3 hours and 50 minutes. We're not going to go through all of it because it's going to be a long freaking time if we do. Let's talk about what he does very effectively during this cross. He pulls out this whiteboard, and I thought this whiteboard was stupid at first. I thought this whiteboard was idiotic at first, but he does a great job muddying the water here. Muddying the water to say, maybe this ammo came from PDQ, and maybe you didn't do a good enough search. Maybe your search actually kind of sucked. And she starts off saying, my search was so good. My search was so, we searched every box. We would have found every single cartridge. And he gets her to acknowledge, maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't search everything. Maybe I could have missed some stuff. Maybe I could have missed things. I think he did a really good job on this cross. Unfortunately, it takes him half of forever to get there. It takes him literal hours of grinding. And that's partially because she is obstructionist. She says, I don't remember. And he's like, really? You don't remember? You sure? All of that. So it takes a long time, but he really does a whole lot on that. Here's the thing. All of that is smoke and mirrors because where the live round came from, if you believe the live round came from Seth Kenny, it's kind of irrelevant. If you believe the live round came from Hannah Gutierrez, it's kind of irrelevant. But it is great smoke and mirrors to deflect, and it may get a juror to acquit. It may get a juror to say, Well, Seth Kenny was the source of the ammo, so I'm not going to convict Baldwin. That's a Seth Kenny problem. So yeah. Now on redirect of Mrs. Popple, which happens after an interesting motion, on redirect, they basically try to pour water on that theory. They basically go, "Hey, isn't it true that this good Samaritan, isn't it true that this good Samaritan, and that's a 200 kroner, so, but I can pull that up here. People are saying I got to do this, so we'll do this. I don't know if it technically qualifies, but somebody in the chat is insisting I do. Runkle needs more whiskey. Please chip in. So we'll cover that. Thank you so much. And yeah, somebody in the chat was like, "Do the thing, do the thing." So what we hear is that there's this good Samaritan who brings in ammo. Good Samaritan, and then we hear from Morrissey. Morrissey kind of leading the witness, but we hear from Morrissey essentially that this good Samaritan was not such a mysterious good Samaritan at all. That this good Samaritan is actually connected to this good Samaritan was actually connected to wait for it, Thel Reed. Good Samaritan is like one of Thel Reed's friends. So what we have here is this weird side thing. We have this weird side business where Thel Reed's side is pointing the finger at Seth Kenny, and Seth Kenny's side is pointing the finger at Thel Reed, and basically, and Thel Reed and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. So it's basically this weird thing of like these two factions are trying to point the finger at each other to say that, to say that they, that the other person is responsible. And Sonny notes, imagine, if you will, this man is your favorite actor. Don't imagine that he's your favorite actor. Imagine that he's a person you've never met. He's not Alec Baldwin. He is Joe Boggs, plumber, right? Joe Boggs, whatever. He was given a cold gun. It's not his job to check. He did nothing wrong but speak without a lawyer. The problem is that he told the police that he did things that are wrong. So he told the police a bunch of stuff that will make it easy to convict him. And the thing is that there are plenty of Joe Boggses out there. Lots of Joe Boggses. And, Frank Dirt, whatever, who have been convicted because they made the dumb decision to talk to the cops. Was Joe Boggs? I don't know. How would I know? How would I know? All right. So let's, we're going to skip that. We're going to look at, we're going to watch the motions, because the motions today are where things get real interesting. The motions, I think, are the spectacular moment today. So we're going to watch the motions. And I am going to have a nice beverage. It is a Mandarin Orange Gin Soda Fizz. All right. Why? Okay, we're not far enough along. We need more audio. And we're going to turn on the closed captions because we can. All right. Now they told us we're coming back at 2. So I rescheduled things for 2:00, and then they had motions at 1:00. And I was like, oh, right. Tomorrow, the jury is coming back at 9:30, but the lawyers are coming in at 8:30 to do more motion stuff. So, so we're going to get motions Right now, we don't have audio. Somebody said, is that a Canadian beverage? I believe it is. Black Fly, where is this manufactured? London, Ontario, Canada. This is a Canadian one. Somebody says, EDB going to help with your background soon. How's that?
Baldwin, and we have, yes, thank you. We have,
Oh, they do pretrial motions. They had lots of pretrial motions. So many pretrial motions. And yeah.
We can't begin without the defendant, please.
all right.
Quinny Bly, just dip it to the side, Runkle. Back, Satan. Back, Satan. Yeah, these are actually pretty good. I'm not getting paid by them or anything like that. I just bought them at the liquor store. They had a young woman who was there who's like, you need to try, hey, do you want to try a sample of this? And I was like, sure. And what sold me on this is that they have the fruit, like, they're not quite like the, they're not like a White Claw where it just tastes like drinking soda, but they also have a, they're not super sweet. I love that. So these are
I
good.
don't think it's not appropriate.
So she's saying we need to have the defense in here to hear about this one because we're going to be arguing stuff. So they go and get the defendant. And this also has the moment that everyone talks about as the most significant moment in this trial. It is actually the least significant moment, but it's the one everybody is latching on to. We're going to talk about that because, lots of people are like going nuts over Baldwin walking out, and it really is a nothing burger. Yeah, Alec just thinks he's super important, and he walks out to get a coffee, and that's it. So that's all. That's it. The jury was not there. All right, we don't need to see the Baldwin cam.
This dialogue here that takes place between pages 2 and 5. You have heard the defense attorneys on appropriate questioning of the witnesses, and also during opening statements talk about how upset Mr. Baldwin was, that he was upset, that he was panicked, that he was ashen. He was even ashen in color.
So what this is about the interview Baldwin gives with the police. Baldwin gives this interview, and I have a video where I go over his interview with the police. And the thing is that during that interview, Baldwin does some dumb things. And one of the dumbest things he does, or well, not necessarily one of the dumbest things, but one dumb thing that he does there is he just like, but they put him in the phone room, right? Or they put him in the interview room. Now the interview room is wired with audio devices. It's bugged, right? And those audio devices in a lot of those rooms are really good. And so what does he do? Well, he calls his wife and he has a conversation. And what does he do with that? Well, he puts it on speakerphone. And so now the prosecution wants to use that statement against him because the defense was going on about how he was so horrified and so traumatized and so shaken by this by what was going on, that they want to play that to counter that narrative. They want to say, no, that's not true. And the thing is this would be completely irrelevant. It would be unimportant. It would be meaningless, except the defense made it an issue. The defense makes it an issue, and because they make it an issue, the prosecution gets to use it. So that's what we're going to see here.
What pages 2 through 5 demonstrate, and I want to tell you. Let me make one. Let me make one correction.
And this is true. He didn't know that she died. However, he did know that she was critically injured and in the hospital. And so, like, hey, bring the kids out. Like, 2 people have been shot by the gun that was literally in my hand. It's not a good look. And the defense screwed up opening the door to this. So,
Sure.
The highlighted is the portion that you want redacted.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I only see, oh, got the wrong one in front of me. Okay, all right, sorry, I transposed them. Okay, go ahead.
Let me find this part. Hang on just a second.
all right. I see we need Nightbot to do some things.
Okay, so if I to help make my point, if we go down to the last paragraph of page 4, you'll see where Mr. Baldwin is speaking to someone on the phone, and he says, and just spend the time here, and they're going to do what they've got to deal with. He's talking about, I think, investigators and also insurance investigators, and deal with what they've got to deal with. And we shouldn't we'll go have, it'll work, and we'll go. And I believe what he says, and I can play it if you need me to, because you can actually hear it on the audio, even though the transcript says indiscernible. We'll go have a good time. So these are not, at this point in time when Mr. Baldwin is making this statement, he's at the police station. He does not know that Ms. Hutchins has passed, but he knows that she's been critically injured, and she's so injured that she's been taken away in a helicopter. And if the defense hasn't spent all of this time saying how panicked and upset he was, I'm not sure that it would be relevant, but he is actually planning basically a vacation, and he tells his family, still come to New Mexico, we'll have a good time. So this is obviously information that directly contradicts what the defense has argued. And if it would help the court to see his demeanor and hear what he actually says, his family was coming to New Mexico the following day.
So this is the thing, right? Is that, and she says, like, it's not relevant except that he's made it relevant. It wouldn't matter except that he made it matter because he's claiming a different thing. So, yep.
Because he had a bit part for his daughter in the movie. So his wife and all of his children were coming the following day, and he is telling at one point, I think he's speaking to his wife, and he has her on FaceTime so we can actually hear her. We can hear her responses. And then he's speaking to another person who sounds.
And this is the thing, is it doesn't matter until it becomes relevant. So, like, let's say, let's say Ms. Morris, and I mean, you're right, Ms. Morrissey might actually. So we've got Michael J. Money saying, is he supposed to spend the whole time weeping in the fucking hospital for the next year? I guarantee you Ms. Morrissey would skip the funeral of a close loved one for work. It doesn't mean anything. The only reason why it means anything is that once you make it an issue, it becomes relevant. So if you say, listen, I was so traumatized that I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't whatever. And they're like, but here you are clubbing, right? Here you are browsing, like, we've got your Tinder records, and here you are saying, hey, I've got, a week off work, I'm down to party, right? Like, it's like, no, that is not consistent. Once you make the claim, then the other side is entitled to rebut the claim, right? So if Baldwin's side hadn't been saying he's so horrified by this, that it's clear that he, had nothing, to do, then that means that it's open for the prosecution to go, he's not though, right? So yeah.
Like some sort of a family assistant or a nanny or someone like that. And he is explaining that
and he's certainly entitled to argue that, right? But it's just the evidence goes in now.
Wants that person to try to convince his wife to still come to New Mexico because they can't get their money back for the plane tickets, and they'd like to go ahead and have a good time.
And this is why that conversation should not have happened in that room. This is why that conversation should not have happened in that recording room. Because maybe he's telling his, sometimes people might tell their wife a little white lie, right? Maybe he tells his wife, listen, I want you here because I don't want to refund the 10 tickets, right? And maybe what he means is, I really want you here because I feel like shit. And I am this is horrifying. And I need somebody around me. I need some distraction. I need something to divert me, right? But that's not what he says. And the issue is you don't have this conversation in the recording room, because anything you say in that room can be used in ways you may not expect. Other people may not interpret your words the way you interpret them. Go back to My Cousin Vinny, right? If you've watched that, I shot the clerk, in that horrified questioning voice gets turned into, what did he say next? He said, I shot the clerk, right? You don't say anything in that room. But his side knew that recording existed, right? They knew that existed. And because they knew it existed, they should have been careful about how they did this. So
Where's the thing about the plane tickets? How do you read that?
So here's where he says it. There's a part here where he says they're not going to give us our money back.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
So
are you talking about lines 19 through 25 on page 4? You object to the redaction on just this portion?
Spiro's reactions are usually
well, you said 2 to 5, and then you pointed out a particular portion within 2 to 5.
Overall, my position is this is the defendant's statement, and it comes in. And I don't see a reason that it stays out. And the reason specifically that a lot of this conversation comes in is because of the defense statements about his state of mind, and this directly contradicts those.
It doesn't really matter if he was given the Miranda instruction at that point, because he wasn't speaking to an officer there. He was just in the room. So, yep.
All right, you're going to come back up here.
Yes, sir.
No?
Do you want me to
Yeah, I want you to go over there.
Can I leave these here? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just going to set this aside.
So, Your Honor, first, what we have within this section that we're going to be discussing right now is we have also some additional hearsay. So we're looking at not only Mr. Baldwin's statements, but it also includes statements from the female speaker who would be his wife. And then, and you see female speaker 1, there's also female speaker 2. So there's additional hearsay aside from, again, the statements that we're talking about with respect to Mr. Baldwin. In addition, when we're looking at whether or not this is admissible, the court has to engage in a balancing test as to what the probative value actually is. The court has already indicated and ruled, in fact, at the motions in limine, that Mr. Baldwin's demeanor, even leading up to the accident, was not going to be coming in, because the court engaged in that balancing test and said, for example, anything regarding him exhibiting poor behavior.
This is kind of a shady argument, because this was poor behavior beforehand as opposed to behavior afterwards. Afterwards behavior is a different thing.
Understood, Your Honor. And so I have actually the court's ruling here, so I'll be more specific. So what it says is that any of the videos or any evidence or pictures which relate to Mr. Baldwin not handling, or that goes to the defendant's gun that worked or didn't work, and they're showing that it did work because he's shooting, there's videos showing that he's cocking the gun, and
it's not spousal privilege because it's his own words. It's his own words. Now, I just want to say, I've normally been fairly impressed by this lawyer. She's just not doing well because she doesn't have a good argument to make here. So that's the problem.
Says that those would come in. However, everything else regarding him yelling at the crew or telling people to hurry up, none of that is relevant, and that is propensity evidence.
Right, and that dealt with what was offered, okay?
That is correct.
Was not offered, this was not even discussed at that time, so this is fresh to the court.
Absolutely, Your Honor. So what we're doing is we're looking at what the court had previously ruled, and then we're using that also to inform the arguments that we're making at this time. And so certainly when we're talking about state of mind for after the fact, that becomes even less relevant than state of mind or actions that were happening leading up to the accident. So when we're looking at what this is actually probative of, the state is saying it's probative of that he's, talking about he's going to go have a good time. He's really not that distraught about it. But if we look again at what is Mr. Baldwin's state of mind after this has happened, what element does that go to within the proof that the state has to demonstrate in order to meet the elements to demonstrate that he's actually guilty of involuntary manslaughter? And the answer is that none of this here is probative of any effect of consequence to any of the elements of the crime that he's charged with. So when the court is engaging in this balancing test, we have to look to see what is the probative value, and there's none or very minimal. But the danger of unfair prejudice is substantial, and it substantially outweighs any probative value in that, again, he's talking about his family, he's talking about plans that they have, and there's danger that the jury will misinterpret that or misuse that to view him as being callous or that he doesn't care about Ms. Hutchins, when actually that's not accurate. So we are asking that the court exclude this section that we're referring to.
And the thing is there absolutely is that danger. They may well view him as being callous or uncaring or anything like that. The problem is that the thing is that so long as there's a legitimate purpose, the court will be inclined to grant it or to let it in. And here there's a legitimate purpose. And I'm being told that it looks a little strange because there's a dude in the gallery right below me, and so I kind of look like I am his head. Hi, folks. I'm just gonna position myself for maximum awkwardness here. I mean, so long as it's not in a situation where it is more prejudicial than probative, and the courts tend to lean on the side of letting things in on that one, they're going to let it in. So, yeah.
In addition, Your Honor, let me go over to page 5. If the court will look at the top of page 5, here again, this is just more, them trying to make him look callous. He's worried about, at the top, he's talking about staying away from people.
Over your shoulder.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Oh, do you want?
I just want it because mine's under yours, so
Understood.
I can't see where you are. Okay.
And the thing is like Morrissey and this lawyer seem to get along, right? They seem to be able to speak to each other like reasonably and in a friendly fashion, whereas Morrissey and Spyro just
So, Your Honor, so what we're talking
other.
about here up at the top of the page is, again, he's worried about being photographed. He does live a very public life, and this is a very difficult, sensitive time just in general for everyone. And the references to the media here, again, could be taken as something callous or something of that sort. And so, he's talking about, this is breaking news, this is media, and he's trying to keep his family away from that as well. So it's misleading, and when we engage in a 403 balancing test, this should not come in.
Normally, I would agree, but for the fact that the defense actually made his demeanor after the fact relevant. So now that they've made it relevant, it's relevant. And it goes both ways.
All right, thank you. The court makes the following ruling. Under 11401, it says it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence and the factors of consequence in determining the action. It is not only the issue of whether he committed the crime of involuntary manslaughter, it's also a relevant fact. And you all made that fact very important through Officer LaFleur yesterday. So I do find that it's relevant to basically.
Did you hear what she said? She said, you all made that relevant through LaFleur. You did this, defense. This is on you. This is your fault. So it's going in.
Respond to you all talking about how upset Mr. Baldwin was. And certainly that you considered that fact of consequence, and I'm deciding that this rebuttal information is of consequence. I also find that its probative value is substantially is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice and all the other choices that are under 11403. I will say that I think that I'm not going to let everything in. I'm going to focus on page 4, and I'll start with line 16 and on page 4, and I will go to page 5.
And I'm sorry, is this what's coming in or what's staying out?
No, it's coming in.
Okay.
The rest of the yellow is staying out.
Can you repeat that line
Just a
again?
minute, I'm reading
Okay,
page 5.
sorry.
Okay, so it's line 16, starting with Alec Baldwin, finishes the rest of the page 4, starts on page 5 at the top, and finishes on line 10. The rest of the yellow will be redacted.
Understood. Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
The next one I show, and Ms. LeBlanc, just correct me if I'm wrong, is on page 12. So this issue goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's state of mind, and I'm looking, Your Honor, I'm sorry, at basically 12 through 14. He understands that whether there's a live round on set or not, these guns can be dangerous, and he says it right here between 12 and 14. What he's talking about with the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. That's him talking about his knowledge of the danger of these guns. That goes directly to the heart of the state's case. As the court knows, the state doesn't disagree with 15 through 17. And again, when we start here on 18, where Mr. Baldwin says, "I'm told," that again goes directly to his knowledge of the injuries that can occur if these guns are not handled with safety. He says right there, "I'm told even with the flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed and die." And you know what? We can take out this part here that says which both of them died, because that is relevant to the Brandon Lee, John Eric Hexum that we agreed to remove. So I don't oppose taking out both of them died, but this goes directly to the heart of the state's case. And then I think it's 21 through 25 we've agreed to redact. Obviously, this part here on the top of page 13 is very important to the state because Mr. Baldwin says, "My point is I've been doing this. I shot enough guns in my day in movies. I've never seen this before where a flash round was." Obviously, what I'm trying to get in is he's got experience with firearms, and he talks to Detective Hancock pretty extensively about that. So his personal experience with firearms on movie sets and off movie sets is all absolutely relevant. You want me to stop there?
Yeah.
Here, let's do this. Let me just, there you go.
So, Your Honor, this was already the subject of a defense motion in limine that the court ruled upon. So we have in the transcript of the pretrial proceedings, the parties were arguing about whether or not this knowledge of danger of blanks would be admissible. And so what the court ruled was, the court said, the court makes the following ruling, weighing whether it has any tendency to make a fact more probable or less probable than it would be without it, and whether its probative value substantially is outweighed by the unfair prejudice. I think it's difficult to deal with what I read in the grand jury transcripts about, the theory about the negligent use of a deadly weapon is that this manner of handling, that he shouldn't have cocked the gun, etc. And then with respect to the alternative is that he failed to check the gun. He failed to confirm that the gun, and I remember the word confirm, about live ammunition before he pointed it at someone. The court went on. I think that I will not allow any testimony other than one sentence, probably by your expert, Ms. Morrissey, that says the blanks also can kill. But to consider that he failed somehow, that's just going to be up to the trier of fact. I think everybody knows that guns can kill. It depends on what's in there. But I think that you cannot mention it, you can mention it, but that's it. We're not going through 5 different questions on tell me how serious this is, and if he's a gun owner and he's done all these Westerns or not Westerns, but all this gun experience, then he should have known. Just say that, and if you can tie that up, great. So that's specifically on this subject. And so we've already argued this, and the court has already ruled. So based on that, we are asking that the court, consistent with its previous ruling, exclude these portions. And the additional portions, there will be a number.
So they want to exclude this bit where Baldwin says he knows blanks can be dangerous. And Morrissey's going to come back swinging.
a number of other sections in the transcript that I think we can dispense with rather quickly once we have the court's ruling on that as well.
Is that the part about when he talks about the commingling? Is one of them about the commingling and the dummy rounds?
I don't recall, Your Honor, I have them flagged, but I think we can move through them fairly quickly and I can identify those to the part every place that is throughout the
After this,
transcript.
we'll skip ahead a little bit.
If I may. So my concern is that I didn't realize necessarily during the motion hearing, I thought we were talking about witness testimony, not the defendant's own statements. And let me try to articulate for the court where I think some difficulty may come in. If I have my expert do what the court suggested and just have him give the one sentence that blanks can kill, then what we're missing, the important part is that Mr. Baldwin knows that. So these statements that he made to Detective Hancock go directly to that one sentence that you're allowing us to get in, because Mr. Baldwin actually knows that, and the elements of the offense go directly to what he knew or should have known. That's in the actual jury instruction. So this is something that he knew or should have known. There are rules that say don't point the gun at anyone, and this is obviously one of the reasons, is because even if you have largely inert ammunition, it can still hurt someone, or Mr. Baldwin even indicated he knew that it could kill someone. So I think that this needs to be in for that reason.
Which motion was it?
Your Honor, it was all for somebody. Your Honor, I believe this was number 3. This would be defense 3, is that correct? Defendant's motion only 3, I believe it was. And we have the transcript if the court would like to review it. Based on what the state has just argued in their reply, may I just be heard as to the new arguments?
Is this your motion?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
The new argument?
Yes, this
That's
state,
a reply,
the state-
isn't it? Didn't she go first?
She did. She did.
You're doing a surreply.
And if I may have just a few sentences, Your Honor, because I think this is
The judge is like, you had your chance. You had your chance.
this is important as what she stated is new, since she's now talking about disagreeing with the ruling that we had. But we relied on the court's ruling. In our jury selection, we did not cover this topic. In our opening, we did not cover this topic.
It's not 3. Where is it?
I believe it's number 3. It's the foreseeability.
7, Your Honor.
Oh, 7. I apologize, Your Honor. Number 7.
You mean defendant 7?
Defendant's 7. Yes, Your Honor. It was our motion to exclude.
I don't have these numbered.
Would the court like me to present the transcript?
No.
The court's convenience. Okay.
All right, they're looking for the transcript. This is going to take them a while.
Yes.
The initial blanks came up in the application.
Okay.
Detail.
Got it.
Baldwin is not enjoying this. Michael J. Money says, amongst other things, but why does it feel like if he shut his damn mouth from the beginning, he'd be in a much better place?
ahead.
Because he would.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Absolutely.
So to allow the state to basically relitigate this, I think would put us in very dangerous territory because the defense relied on the court's ruling and the court was very clear about what would be permitted and what would not be. And I think to say that the state thought that that somehow didn't apply to statements they wanted to introduce by Mr. Baldwin is disingenuous. And so we relied on this again in our jury.
We'll see the transcript.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to approach the court.
Oh shoot! I gotta check on my hot sauce later. Remind me on my hot sauce later. Don't let me go without reminding me to check that my hot sauce still has water.
This was related to, and I think I say it here where I talk about on page 154, which you left out. But this is to Mr. Nikas, where he's saying that the statement such and such would have died if there were a blank in the gun. That they were asserting that they were going beyond live ammunition, and they were talking about that they expected witnesses to testify, in particular Mr. Carpenter, that blanks can kill as well, and that he should have known that. That's different from his own admissions of his knowledge. And I'm going to let the following in. I'm going to let page 12, I'm going to let line 13, right in the middle. Sometimes the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. It shows that he does have knowledge of guns.
Hang on, Your Honor, just want to use, I see, I'm sorry.
And then on lines 18, 19, and I'm told even with a flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed. And then also lines 1 through 5 on page 13.
And Your Honor, I do understand the court's ruling. If I may, just for the court, just to remind, because I know we're dealing with the transcripts and we had these arguments earlier. So if I may, just to kind of perhaps refresh the court a little bit, part of what the arguments were about as well was the fact that the way that the grand jury presentation had gone, and that had not been focused on blanks. It was about live ammunition, live rounds, and that was the basis of what the knowledge must be in order for it to meet the elements of the charge.
This is what in the grand jury, Mr. Carpenter was talking about all these duties that Mr. Baldwin should have had, including the knowledge that blanks can kill. He said that he should have had that knowledge. Everybody has that knowledge when they talk about don't pointing the gun and things like that. And I did not want to belabor the point that blanks can kill. Okay, but that's different from Mr. Baldwin's own assertions of the knowledge that he had with respect to guns. All right, next.
Your Honor.
So how is this not potential ineffective assistance of counsel? Because it's not. It absolutely isn't. And it just, I mean, ineffective assistance of counsel is a very high bar. So maybe if his lawyers were asleep for the entire trial, but like Bowles was a much worse was a much worse lawyer, and there's no ineffective assistance of counsel for that. Rachel says, Mr. Runkle, sir, I cannot be trusted to remind you of anything. I've just returned from a very goth event where alcohol was served. I'm now kind of envious. So, yeah.
Same argument from the state with regard to the bottom of page 14, the last two words that start with.
So we're going to skip ahead a little bit because basically they get to tender a whole bunch of this evidence because it has become relevant. Now, let's see if I can properly capture the moment here that everybody was talking about, which is kind of unimportant.
He told with Mr. Baldwin's motive.
This is a moment that is kind of unimportant, but which made everybody lose their mind. And yeah, Emily's totally right about this. Emily said that the appellate court would call it trial strategy. Do we think it actually was a failed trial strategy, or did they really screw up this bad? They may, I mean, I still say they are at 70+% to win. 70+% to win. So let's watch the moment that just everybody has been losing their mind about.
Motivation to lie about pulling the trigger of the gun. I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore. He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation not to tell the truth. Sorry.
Can we approach briefly?
Sure.
So he got up. The judge said, did he go to the bathroom? Like, that's what I... And now they have a little discussion. They have a little talk. They had a little talk. Have a little brief discussion. It's not long. Him walking out probably ends up on the official record because I'm sure they're discussing it a little bit here. I'm sure they're discussing it a little bit here. The first actors were magicians and he disappeared. Can I play it again and move myself to the right? Yeah, we'll play it again in a moment here. So we got a little bit of a moment here.
I don't think this information is that helpful one way or the other, but I'm going to let it in because of the lateness of your redactions. So because it's 2:00 now. And so
she's basically saying you should have brought this in sooner. So why didn't you bring this in sooner? And now we see Baldwin comes back. We get to see him walk back in the room with a coffee. Where's Baldwin? He's going to come in shortly. And there we go. There's Baldwin. He's got a coffee. Here's the thing. Baldwin does not get chewed out. He does not get ripped a new one. Now, somebody says he Ubered a coffee. I don't think he Ubered a coffee. I think he's got an assistant. I think he's got somebody at the courthouse to help him out who got him the coffee. He doesn't get chewed out, and I think that's probably because his lawyers were able to say, yeah, you know what? He went to the bathroom. I think that's what happened. I can tell you, I've had clients get up and leave. Petty honest throwaway. I'm not trying to put you on blast. I just say, I'm not trying to put you on blast. I figured it was just a supposition. That's all. I think the lawyer got up to say, listen, don't yell at him. He's old. He had to pee, right? He's old. He had to pee. I've had clients get up and try to leave, and they did not make it out of the courthouse. They did not make it out of the building. They tried. I've also had other witnesses who tried to leave. So most people would not be allowed to leave in that circumstance, but Alec Baldwin is Alec Baldwin. Somebody wanted me to play it again, Sam, when he walks out, but they wanted me to move my stupid torso and get out of there. So we're going to do that. All right. We're going to move me out of the way because for some reason I was right in the way. I'm out of the way. So
lie about pulling the trigger of the gun. I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore. He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation.
So they're like, where Spyro is like, where's he going? Where's he headed? And then he sort of laughs about it. He's like, oh, I suspect that Spyro will have a conversation with him later that says, Baldwin, Alec, if you need to pee, like, I get it. You gotta pee. Tap me on the shoulder. Say, I gotta pee. I gotta pee. And he will, he'll say, we need a break, Judge. We need can we have 5 minutes? Yeah. It's not going to be a huge deal, right? Nobody is this was not in front of the jury. No, he's not going to get punished for this. Spyro's probably going to have a talk with him and say, you can't do this again, right? You can't do it again. And it might have been that that he was going to have an outburst. I see people saying he was going to rage. You tap your lawyer on the shoulder. You say, I need a break, right? You need a break. Yeah. My dad represented James Wood, and he said celebrities are all crazy difficult clients for stuff like this. Yeah. A lot of celebrities are used to the rules bending for them and not really used to scenarios where the rules don't bend. So we're not going to cover the rest of Marissa Popel. We sort of talked about her. We will jump to, we're going to jump to this guy. Not this guy. We're going to jump to, where's our next guy? They got to bring him in. This guy. This guy came all the way from Italy. Came all the way from Italy for this moment. Alec Baldwin making the life sucks face.
Testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I would.
All right. Have a seat, talk into the microphone.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandro Pietta. I come from Italy. I am a gun manufacturer. I'm actually the guy that made the gun that been used in the movie.
Would you introduce yourself? And then they're like, no, not that much introduction. So Pietta is well known to people in the gun community. And this is so darling, his little introduction where he's like, hello, I am Alessandro Pietta. I'm from Italy. I am gun manufacturer. I made the gun in this case. Like just, yeah. So I was super psyched to see Mr. Pietta, and here he is. This guy is like, lots of people are like, I want to watch this trial to see Alec Baldwin, right? I'm like, I want to watch this trial to see Mr. Pietta, because this guy to me is a bigger celebrity than Baldwin. I like this guy better than Baldwin as a celebrity. He's just like, this guy to me is, he's more my thing. So, and somebody, somebody called him Pistola Poppy on EDB's channel. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You have to answer her.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate all the
Sorry about that.
information, but I have to ask you a question and then you answer the question.
Sorry.
All right,
It's
so
like, sorry, I
you told
don't
us
know
you're a
how-
gun manufacturer, is
Yes,
that
I
right?
am.
It's also very clear that he hasn't done a lot of stuff in court, right? So, yeah.
And what company do you own?
It's named Fab Fratelli Pietta.
Okay, and do you manufacture Pietta firearms?
Yes, that's the name of the company in English.
How long have you been manufacturing firearms?
The company has been founded in 1963 from our lab, and my brother and myself are running the company since 2000.
And are you familiar with how Pietta firearms are actually made?
Yes, of course.
And how are you familiar?
I've been working in the company since 1995, and I've been taught by my dad how to produce a gun and assist my brother producing,
Just a little bit, yes.
studying engineering demo.
Does Pietta Firearms have quality control measures and inspections of their firearms?
Yes, we do.
And what are those?
We start from raw material, and then we check all the machining part, and then we got our quality control on the assembly department, and of course, before shipping the gun to the customer. So we got several steps in our procedure line.
So, what does Pietta Firearms do? They do a lot of Western guns. They do a lot of like cowboy guns. If you want to get into cowboy shooting, you are quite possibly going to end up buying a Pietta firearm. You are likely going to end up buying a Pietta firearm. And part of the reason for that is that nobody loves the American Old West quite like the Italians. Like the spaghetti Western is a whole thing where Italy made a whole bunch of Western movies. But like these guys just made, they basically are like, we make Western guns. That's what we do. So they've taken a bunch of these old West designs that weren't being made anymore, and they brought them back to life. So a lot of these guns, if you want to get them, you get them from these guys, from Pieta. So yeah.
And does Pieta Firearms use, what kind of manufacturing technology does Pieta Firearms use?
Well, we've been involved a lot in the Industrial 4.0. That means that we are using the most actual manufacturing technology available on the market.
So you're basically high-tech technology.
Yeah, we use CNC machine, full control of robotic system. It's not just by hand, but also use the modern technology.
Okay.
He's like, we are super high-tech.
So, excuse me, what does Pieta Firearms do to ensure that a gun that leaves Pieta Firearms doesn't have any defects? And Mr. Pieta, if I can just have you pull the microphone a little closer and then speak a little slower.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you could just speak a little slower, please.
Sure.
This is saying the one cowboy action shooter I know prefers Pieta over Colt. Cowboy action shooting is a discipline of shooting where you do competitive shooting with like cowboy style guns, I agree. Pieta does great stuff. Now we're going to skip most of Pieta because it's late and we kind of want to wrap this up so that I can do this again tomorrow. What Pieta says is basically we do a ton of quality control. And not only do we do our own quality control, but after we do our quality control, it has to go to a proof house. And the proof house tests it. And then we send it to the US, and the US does drop testing, right? So basically, and then he talks about this specific gun. He says this specific gun was sent to the US to be used in SHOT Show specifically for as a demonstration piece. They want to specifically use it to show people who want to buy Pieta firearms to sell, because this is for business to business stuff. They're like, if you want to buy Pieta firearms for business to business, that you need to, like, that you end up you'd go and you'd check this out. You'd be like, okay, are these good? This was a demo piece. And because it was a demo piece, it was made, they left out the firing pin for it because SHOT Show doesn't allow guns with firing pins. He testifies that it'd be really easy to put the firing pin back in, but that this gun was a perfectly functional gun. It was a great gun. Wait, SHOT Show is in that convention right after the Gundies? Yep. That is the one. So he tells us basically the story of this gun. The other thing he tells us is that there is no way for this gun to fire without pulling the trigger, which I don't think is technically correct, but it is what we hear from Mr. Pieta. So that is Pieta. That's what he has to say. The next thing we get is this guy. If it loads. He's not a wheel. It's this guy. So we get this guy. This guy is, he is associated. He works for a company that basically imports Pieta firearms. And he, so what he does is he basically just, he's the guy who got this gun and had this gun at, he had this gun at SHOT Show, and he basically, the key thing he says, amongst other things, like other than just like, we didn't hammer on this thing and whatever else, is that they actually kept this gun behind a glass display case, so you couldn't play with it. He's like, nobody got to play with this gun right up until we sold it. Who did we sell it to? We sold it to Seth Kenny. Seth Kenny is who got it. Can you please explain how else the gun can go off without touching the trigger? If you have loaded all 6 cylinders, or if you've even loaded 1 cylinder, but the hammer is resting in the fully depressed position on that loaded cylinder, then a strong enough impact to the hammer can set it off. So that is a possibility there. That's kind of the only other way there. All right. So we got this guy, aside from kind of a weird head shape, that's all he has to tell us, is essentially this gun, we didn't mess with it right up until it went to Seth Kenny. And the thing about this is that ultimately Seth Kenny, like, we don't know what Seth Kenny did with it all that much, but the defense wanted to argue that this gun has been used as in gun shows, and so it would have been heavily used and whatever else. This guy says, no, that's not the case. We didn't touch it. We never fired it. We didn't mess with it. Everything was fine. Okay, so next up we get to Corporal Hancock. Everybody likes to comment on Corporal Hancock's lips. Get it out of your system. She is the lead investigator on this. I get it, but I get it. But here's the thing. Why is Corporal Hancock here? Well, amongst other things, Corporal Hancock is going to get that audio recording of the interview with Alec Baldwin in. So Alec Baldwin is we're gonna see that interview. They didn't get that far into it. They get about an hour of testimony, which is kind of uninteresting and kind of boring, and we're not going to linger on it. Basically, just as good as it was going, they say, okay, we're going to stop for today, and tomorrow we're going to do more things. Now, tomorrow is going to be exciting. Tomorrow we're going to see some interesting stuff. Why is tomorrow going to be interesting? Let's embiggen. Tomorrow we are going to see Baldwin's police interview. We're going to see that. Thought you were going to comment on her last name. Like what? Because it's like the movie with Will Smith. So tomorrow we're going to see Alec Baldwin's police interview. We're also going to see Hannah brought into court. So tomorrow is the day to watch, right? Tomorrow is going to be the day to watch because it's absolutely going to be a thing. So I'm excited. I want to be rested up. I'm going to try to get some sleep. You should try to get some sleep too, because in 9 hours we're gonna see fireworks. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be exciting, and Hannah will probably plead the fifth for like 99% of her testimony. She may just plead the fifth generally, like just plead the fifth to everything. We will see, but certainly we're going to see arguments from, we're going to see arguments from Morrissey saying this is not an appropriate plea here. Like, this is not appropriate. She shouldn't get to plead the fifth on this question, or, whatever else. So, yes. And Runkle, don't forget to water your hot sauce. Thank you so much. All right, let's go through some super chats here. Galena Ward, love that he suggests they use guns in Spartacus. Spartacus doesn't seem like a gun-heavy movie for some reason. Dylan Schultz, I heard Hannah's lawyer was a federal prosecutor. Hannah's lawyer? Bowles? Maybe. Tammy Fayette, thank you for the YouTube membership. Much appreciated. Let's eat kids. Let's eat kids. Grammar saves. Thank you so much, Morgan. Improv man. Pro tip, DA won't take method acting as an excuse. That is true. MEZ, option on the producer theory being, or opinion on the producer theory being removed. That is a tremendous help to the defense. I think the jury would be a lot more likely to convict on the producer theory, and that's been taken off. So, absolutely. Wendy Wilkinson, defense giving the lethal round a personality and removing Alec Baldwin from the responsibility of pulling the trigger and causing death. That does seem to be an argument. Absolutely. No way. Welcome. Thank you for the membership anniversary. Cancel. So according to this logic, doesn't this mean that as long as you got an armorer on set, everyone else is absolved of all gun safety? A little bit. That seems to be kind of the argument there. Beldy, and there's no Academy Award for Best Stuntman. There should be. There should absolutely be. There's got to be like, even if there's not an Academy Award, is there an award for Best Stuntman generally? Is there an award for that? Best Stuntman Award. I mean, that should be an Academy Award. So it does look like there are some stunt winners or stunt. Well, it looks like it's best stunt. Okay. If there wasn't one, I'd be like, somebody's got to make one, because yeah, stuntman should be an award. I would disqualify actors who do their own stunts. That should be a thing. Rachel Miller, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Thank you for another 5 gifted memberships. Thank you. Pochi on replay crew today for the Pro Bono Fund, pupper treats, solo cups, or an excursion to Hank Scorpio's hammock district. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much. I do still need to buy a second hammock. Thomas T, it boils down to gun safety. Blame goes to those who didn't respect what could go wrong. Complacency is dangerous around guns. Absolutely. This notion that they need to be able to treat them like they're toys just kind of horrifies me, right? It's like, ooh. I see people saying Taurus World Stunt Awards. Okay. Do you sell DIY sauce kits? I don't. Maybe I should one day. That would be an interesting option. CGR 902, reminder to check your hot sauce. Thank you. Thank you. Shota isn't a big nail against him. His police interviews. Absolutely, they will be. They are absolutely going to use that. Hans Gruber says, thoughts on the SIG P-20? Bad design or user error? I think there's some design faults with that gun, honestly. I love SIG, but the P320 has had too many issues with it for it to just be purely user error, I think. So, yeah. Amanda Lang says, hello, my name is Alessandro Pieta. I made this gun. It would not misfire. Oh, he is so darling. I just kind of like the guy. So, now, yes, this is the other thing. I think that there is a 70% or more chance that he gets acquitted. I don't know that he should in a perfect world, but we've got a world where this is the trial, right? So, I think it's likely that he walks overall. All right, I am going to wrap this up. We are going to get started bright and early tomorrow at 8:30. So 8:30 my time, that's 10:30 Eastern. Come check it out, and looking forward to seeing you join me. All right, let us roll the outro, and I will go water the hot sauce and get some sleep, and see you guys later. The watering, by the way, is putting water in the water locks to make sure that they don't have an issue. Michael J. Money says, I work in the film industry. Stunt folks deserve way more credit. So do tech and crew. I'm an actor, but it's such a small part of the equation. Please appreciate the rest of the film industry. If you're an actor who's giving credit to the stunt and so forth, I appreciate the heck out of it. So I would love to see the stunt guys get proper crediting. Heck, a movie that's actually worth watching is The Fall Guy. Watch The Fall Guy. It sort of talks about stunt guys and the stuff they do. And so I appreciate that as well. Somebody says, is water the hot sauce some kind of euphemism? It is not. I have to put water in the water locks for the hot sauce so that they don't get mold, because I want the hot sauce to turn into deliciousness, not gross. All right. Good night, everybody.